So, yeah, does anyone have any questions based on what we have seen so far? Um, any observations based on observations, like in your own churches or worship ministry? If you have any questions, those are also welcome. And maybe that will be helpful for our discussion also. Um, okay. Silence, I guess that means there are no questions. Okay. But feel free to share observations, questions, whenever it occurs to you, right? Okay, so let's move on. We're going to look at the next topic, which is in the local church. What are some of the methods? Adding to the worship ministry. What are some details we're going to look at, right? So, when it comes to the worship aspect, we see that again, like we see through history, and also if you just look at how it's happening, the worship ministry globally, and even in our own nation, right? You see, like maybe in a rural church, you may be aware of, and the kind of indigenous instruments that are used, right? Different kinds of instruments that are typically part of that region, which are available in that region, which may not be used anywhere else in the world. Maybe some churches can adapt it or do that, but then it is not. It is indigenous. It means it is part of that particular region. It is part of that particular geographical location, right? Because it's available there. It's part of the culture there, and so we use it, right? And so we see that, and we also see that it more to do with the Western church. We see the kind of instruments that are used, and we also see the influence of different cultures in different churches. In the sense, the church need not be in a particular geographical location to be able to use that instrument or to have that particular culture of worship, right? It could be a church in Asia, but culture could be very Western influence, like let's say a church in Singapore or a church in Malaysia, could be because of the influence of culture, because of the influence of various practices and technology and so on. We see that influence, the musical influence, could be more from the West, right? So that possibility is there. So, and there's nothing wrong. I know sometimes people get very upset about it and say, okay, uh, we are I mean, let's say Indian. We are an Indian church, so therefore, excuse me. Therefore, we should sing Indian languages or use Indian instruments and so on. Yes, there is a point to it. It helps, right? But it also helps to know what is the kind of people that God has called you to reach out, right? What is it? What is the kind of people that your church is? Because God places, right, churches in unique locations. Excuse me. Unique locations and unique positions the church and the people uniquely, so that you can be of impact to that kind of to that people group, right? So it can be cross culturally also, which means, okay, then in that question doesn't arise at all. Okay, you are not part of that culture, but then you are reaching cross culturally, right? So that's the thing. So we need to be aware. So there's nothing that is that we can look down on, nothing that we that we are so nothing to say, okay, we idolize this kind of a this genre of music or these kind of instruments to the exclusion of other things, right? Like putting down the other culture. No, we don't do that. It's just that uh, what is it that that you are part of, and what is it that God wants you to be part of. So that's the important. Those are the important questions to ask and answer for yourself and for the church. Right? So as we look at some of these, the instruments, a kind of um, instrument groups that are there. We look at what is called as a chamber music. Right now, this is typically in more of the traditional denominational church, which had missionaries come from the West. Right? When we say West, we're talking about Europe. We're talking about maybe the North American nation and the USA. Maybe the missionaries came from there to share the gospel, to extend the kingdom of God, and therefore, with that also brought the culture, and because of which the culture of worship is also heavily influenced by that, right? So let's look at some of these. What do we actually, first of all, mean by chamber music? Like chamber music, if you look at the history of it, it is typically in a palace, right? In a palace where there were instrumentalists, and they were all part of. There was a smaller group. Like maybe there could be 4 or 5 instrumentalists, maybe a violinist, maybe a pianist, so they were all in a chamber, like a chamber meaning a room, right? So it was not an auditorium, but they were in a chamber and they played music. So that is how this term chamber music came about, and it was, it is typically in a palace, right? So, so we have this chamber music and different kinds of chamber music, right? Even though now it would have nowadays they don't play in a small room, but then the name stuck, right? So you'll have like what you call as a quartet, meaning 4 parts or 4 different instrumentalists, right? Then also we have something called a strings quartet, right? So different kind of stringed instruments like a violin, a viola, a cello, and a double bass. So if you notice, they are all different sizes of the violin itself. The violin probably would be the closest, I mean, the smallest of all these 4 that we have listed here, right? Uh, a violin, a viola, a cello, and a double bass. Right? So these are all stringed instruments, and some are played using a bow, like the violin is played using the bow, which is again, which is a rod which actually holds fine hair that is held in tension, and the hair is actually, when it moved over uh, the string, then it's bowed, or typically it's called bowed over the string, that makes the beautiful music, right? So then we have wind instruments. There also we have a quartet or a quintet, right? Flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon. These are wind instruments, which means, like, I think flute you're aware of. You play music and it's a reed, and that reed vibrates, because of which there is music, right? So these kind of different setups are there, which are used for worship, in worship music also. Then there is also the jazz ensemble and rock and pop bands and so on, right? So we have all these instruments of the traditional church or through the ages, typically from the West. Right? Now, what are really popular these days are what we use in contemporary music, right? So it would have we could have all these instruments that we looked at, like the wind instruments, like the string instruments. We could have those, but also we see that there are typically instruments have become digital, right? They're electronic and they're digital, meaning the same tones are replicated, right? And maybe even more tones. Like there are thousands of tones um, at at the fingertips of a keyboard player, right? And it could also be a MIDI keyboard, meaning it could be a very small sized keyboard, which, because it is connected through a laptop and the laptop would have access to a whole lot of tones which you download and keep. And this MIDI keyboard, because of its interface with the laptop, it uses a special interface, a gadget, um, an electronic device, um, and so that has access to all these tones, and it just transforms that MIDI keyboard into a beautiful instrument which can play a very, very versatile instrument. So you have tones like the violin playing through a keyboard. You have tones like a guitar tone playing through a keyboard, and so you know so the the repertoire of tones, or the collection of tones, the list of tones, the database grows exponentially, and through a MIDI keyboard, all these tones are played, all this music is played, right? So in contemporary worship, we've seen that change, or that evolution of because all the other instruments, yes, they have their place. Certain tones, even though replicated, um, it's not like the original, right? Because it is a wooden instrument, and it plays. It is even raw when it's being played, and so on, right? It's not electrical, it's not digital. It's a different feel, right? So, but the thing is it's portable. You can take it wherever you want. It's small, convenient. Only thing is it runs on electricity, and also there is a constant supply of it, either through a backup genset, or you have those inverters, and so most places have that, right? So we see that it is being used, and so we see that shift, right? And even across rural uh, churches, or not just in the city, we see this adaptation, right? Um, and and so if you're looking at typically indigenous instruments, right, instruments of that particular region, like maybe certain Indian instruments, like the dole or tabla or mridangam here we have in the south, and you know um, certain other percussion instruments, like maybe string instruments like the sitar, and so on, veena, and so on. So those are all these tones are there uh, in the digital space, right? Digital instruments, and also any other nation. Like if you look at the African nations, and some of the instruments that are used there, anything is possible if it is digitally changed and loaded and downloaded as a MIDI file, and then it's being used, right? So we see this shift happening even in the rural churches, right? So that is there. Okay, there's a video that I'd like to. In fact, I have to share the previous two videos also, so I've not done that. So we'll share that video along with Paul Baloch. Paul Baloch actually has a video on different styles, music styles, in contemporary worship itself, and it's for those of you who are interested, it's good. You can take a look at that. Okay. Now, what are some tools that are available for worship teams that are very valuable? We have, of course, YouTube, which is a repository of songs. Everybody's go-to place when they release songs is primarily a YouTube channel. So where the songs are released, where the video is released, and there's YouTube Music also, which is which is just and you can just release the audio, and so YouTube is a go-to place as of now. And I remember attending a workshop in 2017, right? So this is 8 years back. Attending a workshop on music, and I was just curious about music production, and so I attended that. So they were talking about how music is recorded and studios and so on, and how music is distributed, right? So 2017, so they were saying things like, in the coming days, the way people are going to consume music, like listen to music, is going to change. So they were saying things like, okay, you're not going to have CDs anymore. You're not going to have used DVDs anymore. right? So all that is going to change. And music. So those days, I was I was listening to CDs. Right? And typically your laptop will have a CD drive, and then your cars also have CDs. So listening to CDs, of course, USB drives with the MP3s, listening to it. But then, so they were just saying things like the streaming platforms, right? Streaming platforms like Spotify and other streaming platforms, saying those will be more popular, right, than uh, all these CDs and all that. So slowly that is going to be phased out, and all music people are going to listen digitally, right? And so I couldn't really fathom that. I couldn't understand, hey, how can that be? How can CDs people not listen to CDs? But the fact is true. Fact is that it happened. Like right in that year itself, it didn't take too long. That year itself, 2018, 17, 18. When we released, when APC released its first album, yes, we released it as CDs, right? And people were using it. But then a year from then, um, and maybe 2 years down the line, when we asked people and when we were giving CDs, people were reluctant to take CDs, right? The CD distribution of CDs almost came to nil, zero, because people preferred listening to the songs online. People prefer to watch the videos, or they would ask questions like, "Are you on Spotify? Are you on other streaming platforms?" Because we want to listen to the videos, listen to the music on streaming platform as we are commuting, as we are going from place to place, or just give it as a MP3 file, or just maybe put it in a USB drive and plug it into a car as we're going, and maybe hear it from a phone. So we see that the music, most of us, we listen to it on our phone or laptop or any digital device, right? It's very rare that we put a CD or a cassette tapes. No one has that. It's like become a collector's item, become an antique. Right? So we see that this is something that is these are things that are happening, right, in today's world, and it will continue, right? It will continue. So YouTube is a very powerful tool, and so we can use it, make use of it, sharing songs, looking for new songs that are coming up, keeping in touch with the um, latest things that are happening. Um, yes, there is a danger. There's the good and the bad, but at least you are aware. You're made aware of some of the dangers, and you can learn from what is good practices. So all that we can learn. So it's an important tool. Then the other thing is that, of course, there are plenty of online courses, right? Um, and I think one of the earliest resource of online learning for, I'm not talking about a course, but really learning, is by Paul Baloch, right? Paul Baloch, he made it free. He put everything, all resource on worship leading, on playing instruments, contemporary worship, right? Songwriting, all these resources. There's a website called leadworship.com, and he made it all, he made it available. And so I remember when we had our worship team trainings those days, 2000, we're talking about 2015, 2016, 10 years ago. We used that resource, and it's timeless in the sense it's not outdated. So whatever he put together and uploaded, and so I remember we bought one entire set of DVDs. I think the set of 10 DVDs or so. We bought it, and we used it training our worship team those days. Now the whole thing is again available as videos online. So use that, make use of that. So the resources are there, online. Um, Several churches have also come forward to put their experience and also teaching to the church globally, right? One of which is Bethel Worship You. That's an online course, but also an in-person conference that happens once a year. They typically used to do it for maybe 2 weeks, and then they reduced it to a week or something like that. And then, but they that content is there, right? And also any of the other bigger churches, they also have that. Uh, Online, you also have several other sites like worshiptogether.com, which has the lyric sheets and also the chord sheets. Right? For a musician, this is very valuable. So, to learn a song, to learn the song correctly, right? Um, and to know what the chords are, and if you're playing a keyboard, how do I learn it? If I'm playing a bass, how do I play it? And different instruments, how do I play? Drums also. So the thing is that for most of the songs that are being released now, so these songs have their separate tracks or separate learning videos. Um, like if you're singing, right, how to sing harmony for this particular song. There's those videos are there, teaching videos are there, instruments, drums, bass, guitar, everything. You have those parts, and you can actually learn them. So it has become so there's no end to these resources. It's all available, and most of this, 99% of it, it's free, right? So it's a good resource. And so the worship team, the worship ministry, must be made aware of these resources, and also encouraged to use these resources. After all, it's for the glory of God and to be a blessing to the church. So, to use these resources so that they can build on it, improve, and go further on, right? Okay. Any questions here? Okay, we're just going to look at some technical stuff. Okay, um, this might be boring or interesting, depends on which part of the universe you are in when it comes to music and worship technology. Okay, so but this is an important thing, right? For those of us who are involved in worship ministry, we don't need to know I mean, not know. I mean, in the sense, you don't have to get into the depths of it, but it's important for us to know what these are, because we need to be familiar with this, because these are used, right? This is something which is necessary. Now, there gone are the days when all we needed was a hymn book, right? There would be an organist who would play, and you needed a hymn book. You need a song to look at the words, and you sang it, right? So yes, there is still beauty in that simplicity, right? But the fact is that things have changed. There is technology that you can use to be a blessing, right? So the sounds are better. You get to hear, better and good music, clear sound, and therefore, I think whether you're doing rural ministry or urban, contemporary urban city kind of a ministry, a basic thing like a sound system is very important, right? So everybody invests in it, and it's not that you want to sound cooler, or you want to, you want to have the cool equipment, technology, the latest one. No, it because it has become a necessity rather than something as an option, right? It has become a necessity. So let's look at some of these components or equipment that we need to use for, and we are looking specifically at worship ministry. This will apply to any church, worship ministry. So, of course, all of us know microphones, mic, right? So there are different kinds of mics. Um, just because you can't just go into the shop and then just buy a mic and use any kind of mic, because mics are built differently for different purposes. Right? There are mics for speaking, which means it picks the speaking frequency, right? So the frequency with which we speak and the frequency in which we sing are different, right? So there are mics which pick up and enhance that. So there are vocal mics which are meant for speaking. There are vocal mics which are meant for singing. There are mics which are meant for instruments, right? So suppose you're miking a drum kit, right? You're putting a mic in front of a drum kit or a cajon. If you're putting a mic in front of a speaker where you're playing bass and the bass guitar and the sound is coming through a speaker, normally what they would do is they would mic it, especially in live settings, they would put a mic in front of a bass amp to get that raw sound, which is again amplified on the front of house speakers. So there are different mics for such instruments also, right? So we need to consider now. Of course, with vocal mics also, you have cordless mics, right? You have headsets which you use, and typically, you have on your earphones also, right? You have these kind of headsets. Right? You have these mics. Now these mics you can't use for. You can. I mean, you can try singing, but it's not the best. It doesn't reproduce. So it might reproduce sound quality, for singing. It's not the best. So what it typically does is it captures the sound and converts it into sound signals. It converts it into signals, and then which goes into your system, your amplification system, sound system, which amplifies it, and then you play it back, right, through the speakers. It play that signal back into the speakers, and you're able to amplify it. You're able to modify it. You make it sharper, lower the frequency. So all that manipulation you're able to do because you're able to capture the sound, right? So the sound capture is very important. That's why certain mics are very expensive, which run into lakhs of rupees, um, um, if it's Indian currency, because of because of the sophisticated way in which it captures it and conveys a signal. So there's no loss of signal, right? There's no loss of signal when it transfers it, and also you need some special cables for it. We also have cordless mics, wireless mics, right? We also have wireless headsets which are meant for maybe preaching. You can hold your Bible, your hands are free, and all that, right? So it goes to what we call as a mixer or a soundboard, right? Now, this has again also become a necessity, right? Because from the soundboard, or when it goes into the soundboard, you can actually manipulate the sound. You can enhance the sound. You can cut out some of the noises. You can do all that on the soundboard, what we call as a mixer. I'll just see if there is a picture here. No. Okay. So let me see if we can pull up mixer. I think most of us know what a mixer looks like, but just in case, right? Let me just make sure that we don't miss out on that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let me just share that. Okay. Okay. I think you can see that. Okay. So I hope it's clear, big enough. Right. So that's a mixer. That's a soundboard. So it has all these different, what do you call as channels, right? And it has different places where okay, so you can plug in, uh, and then you can plug in, meaning the cables go in, from the mic, it goes to any of these that you can see here. And yeah, so, and these faders, or what we call as these knobs that are used there. Yeah. So these can be adjusted, and every adjustment influences the sound. It's as simple as that. So basically, it's just that. But it is complex in the way you use it, and to the ends for which you use it. Right now, this is. Let me just stop sharing. Okay. Now, why is this become a necessity? It's become a necessity for two things. One, of course, for live sound. Right, you're sitting there in the auditorium, and it definitely helps us to enhances the sound quality, so you're able to hear it. You don't have to strain. Right. The other thing is also that I think more and more churches are right now, they're also into live streaming the service, right? So they stream the service so that it's made available. They also capture record the service, the message, the worship time. It's also recorded so that it can be uploaded, and people globally can be blessed by it, right? So even for that, you need to have good quality, right? Because when you record it, when we upload it, the quality actually changes, right? There is a loss of quality uh, when it doesn't sound as good as the live one. So if it has to sound closest to the live experience, then it has to be enhanced sufficiently. It has to be pushed up. The signal levels have to be pushed up so that there is no loss of signals, right? So when we upload it, so that's the basic logic of it, right? So it has to be fine-tuned. It has to be enhanced, and so on. And so you have these knobs for controlling the tone of it, amplifying it, and all that. So that's a mixer, a soundboard gives this that. Okay. Yeah, equalizers, tones, these use it. Then what we call as the amplifier. Okay, so amplifier, as the term suggests, it amplifies the sound, which means amplifies is to push up. Right? It sounds louder than it is. So let's say if it's a big hall, the sound that is coming from there, the person who's speaking obviously cannot reach, the volume cannot reach the end of the hall. Maybe if thousands are seated or 2,000 are seated, it cannot reach the end of the hall by normal means. So the amplifier increases the volume, pushes up the volume of the signals, allows more signals to pass through, or what is, I don't know what the technical term is, but it allows more of it to pass through so that it sounds louder, right? You increase the volume and it sounds loud. Okay. So these are also there, which take care of the sound that comes from the mixer and amplifies it to the speakers. Now the speakers simply convert the sound which is converted from the mixer and sent to the speaker. It again converts from the digital signal to analog signal, right? So the opposite of digital is analog. So it converts it back into sound waves, right? The sound waves from the mic, when you speak, it's a sound wave. Inside the mic, something vibrates and it's captured. It's sent as signals. It comes back into the speaker, and the speaker, from a digital signal, it is again converted into a sound wave so that we can hear. If it's a digital signal, we can't hear it, right? So the speaker again converts it back to a sound wave. So it's all that happens in the fraction of seconds, right? So there are some technology, some gadgets, equipment which take care of the lag, or what is called as latency, right? Because the delay in which you speak, see, it has to the whole thing goes through a process. And so to take care of any delays, sometimes you will see a mismatch between what is being spoken. The person is moving their lips, but the audio comes a little later. Right? Sometimes you might have seen on some videos. So we call that as latency, meaning there's a delay between the audio and the video. Okay? Now, that has to be fixed so that there's no delay. So the experience of the listener is seamless, right? So all these things are there. So you see, there a lot more goes behind the scene in order to make the service a good one. Right? So, and therefore, it's part of it. Right? What was once seemed to be what once seemed to be something that is a luxury or something as an option has now become a necessity. Right? Okay. Then we have something called a snake. Okay. It is again a cable. It is a special cable which runs from the mixer, from the soundboard, and it is also there maybe in front of on the stage. So where all the instruments and the mics, like all these go into what we call as a snake cable, right? So from the mic, there's a cable which goes there to the snake cable. From the guitar, there's something which goes to the snake cable. So it's actually a snake cable is a bunch of cables, right? So which can actually take inputs. So it goes into the snake. So let's say the soundboard. Let's say for example, your mic cable, the mic cable. It's practical to have, let's say, 10 feet or 15 feet of length, right? But what if the soundboard has to be, or the hall is, let's say, 50 meters, right, or 50 feet? So it's not practical to run a cable 50 feet in length. You know? So my cable. So what normally we do is have the snake cable, which runs the length of the hall, right from the stage all the way to the sound board or the mixer, which could be at the end of the hall, back of the hall, right, where the person can actually hear everything and mix the sound, what we call as mixing the sound. So the cable, mic cable, from the mic goes into the snake cable, and the snake cable conveys that signal all the way to the soundboard. And from the soundboard, again, we have these various inputs which go into the channels, right? So mic cable's input is there as a particular cable from the snake into the soundboard. Right? It's a simple setup, uh, and then it actually helps. It helps to sort of keep everything clean so that people are not tripping over cables. Right? It's just one cable, consolidated cable, which has multiple cables inside. So what we call as channels, right? It can be an 8-channel mic, snake, or a 16-channel snake, which means it has 16 cables there, or 32-channel snake, which means it has 32 cables inside of it, right? So that's a snake cable. Again, it's a very useful one, given the size of the hall and so on. Okay, I know it's getting a little technical for those who are non-technical types, but yeah, just stay with me, okay? Then we have these processors, effects processors. See, some of these effects, I'm sure you would have heard, right? Somebody says, like in some of these meetings, and they say, hello, 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 check, check, check. That's a delay, right? Or an echo effect which is there, and some of these effects are used to enrich the sound. Right? Suppose there is a slight delay or a reverb, as we call it, to the person who's singing. Right? It makes the sound sweeter. Right? It makes the song the person is singing, it makes it richer. So if there is a reverb, an effect called reverb added to it. So there are these different effects. So suppose there is a reverb, then the sound becomes richer. It enhances the quality of the sound, and you would have heard that most of the songs that you hear that are recorded, it has been mixed, right? Mixed with this reverb effect, maybe either in the sound or otherwise externally. It has been mixed in order to enhance the music, enhance the sound. And you might have seen, like if you're a guitar player, maybe you used a pedal, right? An FX processor which has several pedals on it. One has a delay, a distortion. Maybe it has a flanger. It has a wah pedal. All these are different effects, right? And it adds to enhance the sound. Okay. Then we come to monitor speakers. So what happens is, let's say, this is a problem, right? It's a big hall. You're there in front, the worship team, everybody's there on stage. The audience, the congregation is further away. And you have those speakers that are facing the congregation, like facing the crowd. Now, because of the length of the hall or the magnitude of the hall, the speakers are placed way away from the stage, right? And they are facing there. So on stage, you cannot hear, especially if it's a big stage with multiple instruments, you cannot hear what you are saying because the speakers are facing that side. The audience can hear, but you are not able to hear what you are saying. So if what you're singing, if you can't hear, then you will make mistake. Right? And what mistakes like you will not sing in pitch. Right, the notes that you're supposed to sing, you will not sing. It could be either something more, something less. It won't be accurate. Same with the instrumentalist. They can't hear what they're saying or what they're playing, so it's going to be very difficult. So we need to have what we call as monitor speakers. Right? So these are speakers which are kept just for those who are on stage. Right? Monitor speakers. Now, these are smaller in size. There could be multiple monitor speakers on the stage so that we get a reference. Whoever's on stage get to hear it, and there's accuracy. So now the monitor speakers have become smaller and smaller and smaller, so that it just becomes like a headphone. Right? So the speaker is the monitor speaker is just a headphone that you plug in, and there is a monitor amp. And it's a wired thing which goes there. And so you, as an individual, you get to hear what you want to hear. You can also select things like that. Also, monitor speakers have become wireless. So it can be a wireless thing that you're wearing, and you can walk around, especially when it comes to plays, productions, and so on. It helps if you're having a wireless thing. You can walk around different parts of the stage. Maybe it's a musical. It helps. Right? So these are what we call as monitor speakers. Right? So this is also an important part of the sound system. Okay, we'll stop here, and next class we'll go into other aspects of it. Okay, we'll stop here. Right. Thank you. God bless.